Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Dr. Natalie Hope Haddon, and I'm the Executive Director of GW's Center for Excellence in Public Leadership, which is part of GW's College of Professional Studies. And on behalf of the leadership of the university, it is a pleasure to welcome you to GW and also to tonight's special event presented in partnership with the Politics and Prose bookstore. Before I do a little bit more of that, I just want to recognize that Mayor Bowser is with us today, so can we acknowledge her presence? It's such a pleasure to have her with us. GW's location in the heart of the nation's capital and our leadership in fields like public policy, law, and international affairs, and our unique partnership with Politics and Prose have created what we like to call here at GW a remarkable only at GW convening power. This evening we are delighted to join together to host Representative James Clyburn, who epitomizes service leadership, having spent over 30 years in Congress and a lifetime fighting for social justice. Representative Clyburn demonstrates to all of us what it means to fight and to give of yourself for the greater good. It is an honor to welcome him to GW. To introduce tonight's discussion and our guests, I would now like to turn the podium over to Brad Graham from Politics and Prose bookstore. Brad.
Right, well, thanks, Natalie, and let me add my own welcome to everyone and also express my gratitude to GW for helping to organize this event and for making this lovely auditorium available. This partnership between P&P and the university has been going on for some years now, enabling us to bring more authors together with all of you. And we're especially delighted to be able to present this evening Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina. The congressman told the story of his own life in a memoir published in 2014, Blessed Experiences. His election to the House in 1992 marked the first time in nearly a century that a black man was sent to Congress from the state of South Carolina. Prior to that, 8 black men had represented South Carolina in the House in the aftermath of the Civil War, and Congressman Clyburn's new book recounts the story of those pioneering 8. They came from different backgrounds. Some had been born enslaved, others had parents who were free, some had grown up in South Carolina, others were Northerners who had moved into the state as adults. All their political careers developed against the backdrop of fierce resistance and KKK threats and violence, and were largely cut short by the revanchism of Jim Crow. While these 8 were little known until the Congressman's book, they inspired Congressman Clyburn. In fact, when he became a whip in 2007, he asked that their portraits be hung on his conference room wall. His intent in writing a book about them had been initially to call attention to their struggles and determination in fighting to enshrine the rights of African Americans. But as the book took shape, its purpose took on new significance as what the Congressman calls a cautionary tale. Because with America's politics shifting sharply more to the right and the MAGA movement gaining strength, Congressman Clyburn came to see parallels between the efforts by those back in the later 19th century who worked against his black predecessors in Congress and sought to reinstate the antebellum social order of white supremacy, and those today who seek to erase black history from our history books and impede voting by black people. New names, same old game, Congressman Clyburn writes pithily. His book is indeed a timely reminder of history repeating and what's required to preserve democracy and the rights of all. In conversation with the Congressman this evening will be Norman Ornstein, an expert on U.S. political institutions and the election system, and who for many years was a resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. His articles and opinion pieces have been published widely, and he's the author of a number of books about politics. So please join me in welcoming Congressman Clyburn and Norman Ornstein.
Thank you, Brad. And let me first give a shout out to GW, one of the jewels in our city, and Politics and Prose, now 3 crown jewels in our city. Building community, which is so important, as both have done. And I'll say what an honor it is to be here with Jim Clyburn, whom I've known for decades since he came to Congress. And I was around here for decades before that. But I just want to say that having known thousands who have served in the House and Senate, this is a man who embodies every value of public service, patriotism, decency, depth, and intellectual qualities that you would want in public service. And so for me, this is a particular honor. And this book is a masterpiece in a lot of ways. I picked it up expecting that I would basically just have a recounting of 8 people who had served a century ago. It is far more than that. It's a history of those times. But what Jim has done as well, and I think in a necessary way, and we'll talk about it a little bit tonight, is to reflect on his own life and career and experiences. And the fundamental reality, I was going to leave this for later, but I'll say it now. Martin Luther King, whom you knew and worked with well, said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And you read this book and live in these times, and you realize the arc of the moral universe is reversing itself at this point. It's not bending towards justice, it's bending back in a very difficult way. And these parallels are ones that we need to talk about a little bit. But to start with, Jim, let's just go through with a little bit of a sketch of these 8. So start with Joseph Hayne Rainey, who was the first person of color to serve in Congress and served for 4 terms, starting in 1870. Just tell a little bit about him.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to GW, Politics and Prose, for this night. I apologize for this raspy voice, but around this time of year, I kind of get something called sinus conditions, and so, but I feel fine, but I don't sound too good.
You mean it wasn't for yelling at Mike Johnson? Okay.
I wish that were the case. But, not. Well, Joseph Rainey was born enslaved in the little town of Georgetown, South Carolina. But his father was a barber, and his father was allowed to do extra work and keep the money. And he used that money to purchase his family's freedom. And when he purchased the freedom, he moved the family to Charleston. And there, Joseph Rainey was taught barbering by his father and became a barber in the Mills House. I don't know how many of you have been to Charleston, but the Mills House has been restored, and it's there, and kind of funny, but when I lived in Charleston, we young Democrats used to hang out in the watering hole at the Mills House. I think it's a little bit different than it was when he was there. Now, when the Civil War broke out, he was conscripted into the Confederate Army. But he didn't want to do that. So he and his wife boarded a ship and went to Bermuda. And they lived there in Bermuda until the war was over. And they came back to Charleston. If anybody has been to Bermuda, you have probably encountered Barber's Alley. Joseph Rainey, the barber, became a barber in Bermuda. His wife ran a dress shop, and they named Barber's Alley in his honor, and it's still there today. Came back to Charleston, went back to Georgetown, got involved in politics, and that's where he got elected from Georgetown.
Okay, now let's talk about, I guess you could call him a black sheep in some ways.
Yeah.
Robert Carlos DeLarge, who would be your least favorite of the 8.
Yes, he was. He was from a little town of Aiken. And somebody told me I saw a photographer from Johnson. Aiken is there. This guy, very quirky personality, but he was from Haiti. His mother and father were relatively wealthy. His father was a tailor, his mother was a dressmaker, and they owned slaves. And he was of mixed race. And he went to Charleston because the opportunities for mixed race people in Charleston were better. And he was one of the first early members of the Brown Society. Now, the Brown Society was still in operation when I got to Charleston in 1962. This guy lived that life. He joined the Confederate Navy and fought to preserve the order of the day. But when the war took its turn, he saw an opportunity to change his stripes. The guy was just not a good guy. But he served only one term, and he spent most of that time trying to keep his seat, and he didn't. I don't know why, but he died. I guess he was 39 years old when he died. But that one term he served. Now, it's kind of interesting. The other guys didn't like him, and they didn't hesitate to let him know they didn't like him. And I grew not to like him either.
But it's also interesting in part because these 8 did not all have the same views or the same attitudes towards how to deal with a society or deal with politics. Well,
the third guy...
It was a big tent.
Sure, it was a big tent. But if you're going chronologically, I think you go to Robert Brown Elliott.
Robert Brown Elliott is next.
Well, Robert Brown Elliott hated DeLarge. But when DeLarge got in trouble, they were trying to take his seat away. All those guys defended him. Rainey testified in his behalf, but he was just a no-good dude.
Okay, so Robert Brown Elliott was the first black speaker of the South Carolina House and then served in Congress.
Robert Brown Elliott is a little bit controversial because he was not a South Carolinian. He went to South Carolina from Massachusetts. However, he was educated in Liverpool, England. And there's still we can't prove that he was not an American. We can't prove that he was. He said he was. And so he moved to South Carolina after the war, and he got elected to the legislature and to Congress. He only served about a term and a half. He really was an able attorney, very intellectual. When he got to South Carolina, he had the good fortune of meeting his wife, who was from a very wealthy family there, and he used those connections to become a good, very well-connected lawyer. He was really the best orator of the crowd. He was very smart politically, but he loved Congress, but corruption in South Carolina was so bad, he decided not to stay in Congress. He went back to South Carolina served in the legislature and became the first African-American Speaker of the House. South Carolina had 2 black speakers of the House. A lot of people surprised to find that out, but Elliott was the first one.
One of the things that just struck me before we get back to the others was the incredible level of talent and depth of intellect. And you'd think about people coming out of those horrific times,
Yep.
coming out of slavery, knowing that education was going to be suppressed. They didn't want them to learn anything, be able to read. And the the talent there.
Yep.
And I have to say, it's wrenching when you think about all that talent that was there and had that brief period.
Yep.
The talent was still there, and then they just shoved them right down
Absolutely.
back into obscurity at best.
Sounds
Worse.
familiar?
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that, aren't we? Okay, Richard Harvey Kane, the first black minister in the House of Representatives.
Richard Harvey Kane was not a South Carolinian as well. He was born in what is now West Virginia, Greenbrier. At the time, as you know, Virginia split over the issue of slavery. His family very early moved to Ohio. He felt the call to the ministry around the age of 19. They go out to Ohio. They were United Methodists. He became disenchanted with the United Methodist Church. The hierarchy was of such. He was relegated to second-class membership. He left the United Methodist Church, enrolled at Wilberforce University, the first private HBCU, and sponsored by the AME Church. So he became an AME. After going, he went to Iowa first, but then the AME Church sent him to New York, and he pastored Bridge Street AME Church in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
The church is now in its 3rd location, but there, when we launched last Tuesday, a big delegation from that church came to the launch of the book. Now, the interesting thing about Kane, when he was at Wilberforce, he attempted to enroll or to volunteer for the war, wanted to fight on the side of the Union. He was not allowed. There was a bunch of them from Wilberforce that wanted to fight. They were not allowed in. There was a law against blacks being in the army or fighting in that war. And in fact, you see the quote in the book, they were told, this is a white man's war, and they were not allowed to fight. So he stayed in New York until the war was over. And he was sent by the AME Church down to Charleston to rebuild Emmanuel AME Church, which had been burned down. Many of you may recall the insurrection of Denmark Vesey in 1822. That church was destroyed. And if you were to go to Charleston now and to live at the Embassy Suites in Charleston, you will be in the original home of the Citadel. And that building was built, you're right at the back door of Emmanuel. It was an arsenal built to keep watch over Emmanuel AME Church. And so Kane was so successful until the membership grew to 5,000 or 6,000. So he started a second AME church, Morris Brown, which is my home church.
Yeah.
And he named that church for the guy who had been the first pastor of Emmanuel, who had since gone to Philadelphia. And so Morris Brown AME Church is named for Morris Brown, the former pastor of Emmanuel, who is also the second AME bishop.
So I'm going to want to get to some of these larger themes. So I'm actually going to skip over Alonzo Jacob Rancière, even though, I mean, he served one term.
He served one term and didn't do much, except I give him some credit. There are members of the Divine Nine in here. Y'all know why I'm wearing purple tonight? Yesterday was Founders Day of that fraternity. That all y'all gonna end up in a mega chapter.
But let me move on to a genuine Civil War hero.
Oh.
Maybe blacks couldn't serve, but Robert Smalls was incredible. So, and he had 5 terms in Congress. Talk a little bit about Robert Smalls.
Robert Smalls was, in my estimation, the most consequential South Carolinian who ever lived. Now, I know some people who are in here who may say, oh, it's Strom Thurmond. Some may say it was John C. Calhoun. But think about this. Born enslaved in Beaufort, South Carolina. At the age of 12, his mother convinced their owner, John McKee, to let Robert Smalls go to Charleston and work there. The money, of course, he earned would come back to the owner. That was because his mother feared for his safety. She thought he was a little bit rambunctious. He was hanging out with the owner's children, breaking curfew for blacks. So she wanted him gone. And he gets to Charleston. He gets a few menial jobs as a lamplighter. But people noticed something about him. And he wanted to make more money. And the coveted job was to work on the waterfront. He finally got a job on the waterfront. And he was assigned to the ship, the Planter. While working on that Planter, Robert Smalls exhibited tremendous leadership skills. So the 3 white guys who ran the ship, made him the supervisor. So Smalls noticed that every Friday night, these 3 guys that ran the ship would go into Charleston, stay overnight, and wouldn't come back until sometime Saturday afternoon. Well, one day when they were away, Smalls took the captain's hat, playing around, flopped it on his head, and started mimicking the captain. And one of the guys said, you know, Smalls, when you put that cap on and prance around this ship, you look exactly like the captain. Well, so you know, Robert Smalls was of mixed race. His mother never told who the father was. I've got my theory, based upon my research. I think John McKee was his father. That's me, who's the owner. Well, that put an idea in his head. And he started studying the currents. He knew how the water flowed in the harbor. He started listening to the captain, what he would say as he passed sentry points. He learned the whistles, how to pull the string that sound off the whistles, short sound, long sound. He learned everything. And one night, after consulting with his wife, and our conversation is in this book that he and his wife had, and his close friends, they hatched a plan to escape. And when those 3 guys went into Charleston, he knew they weren't coming back. They put the plan to work. And to make a long story short, they stole that Planter, sailed it out of the Charleston harbor, got past 5 sentry ports. When he passed Fort Sumter, he sounded the whistles, and the sentry at Fort Sumter yelled out to him, "Captain, go blow those damn Yankees to hell." Well, the captain was in town somewhere. He was talking to Robert Smalls. And when they got beyond a certain distance, Robert Smalls' wife, who they had smuggled onto the ship, brought with her a white bed sheet. And they turned that into a flag of surrender, hoisted that flag, and much to the surprise of the Union Army, when they approached the ship, there were nothing but African Americans on there. So they freed, all of them got their freedom. Smalls got $1,500, which was, he was shortchanged by a bunch. And he was then assigned to work on the planner to help the Union soldiers navigate that harbor. Well, here is where it gets interesting. A big bounty was put on his head, and there was a big reward out for whoever could help return that ship to the Confederates. It was their best ship. Well, one day, when that ship was down there, Hilton Head, there was a big fight. Someone recognized, from the Confederates, they recognized the ship. And they decided they were going after that ship, and they were going to get the money for the reward. And they had a fierce battle. And the battle got so fierce, the captain of the planter got scared and ordered Smalls to beach the ship, to give it up. Smalls, using some colorful language I will not use here tonight, would not do it. Instead, he locked the captain up into the pilot's cabin and took over the ship, won the fight, returned the ship back to shore, and when the authorities found out what had happened, they fired the captain, gave Smalls the ship, made him a captain. So in spite of everything that you read to the contrary, the first African-American captain in the United States Navy was Robert Smalls. Smalls, when you look at his escape from slavery and this battle, and then this thing here, and I'll let you ask the next question.
Yeah.
Smalls escaped in March, April of 1862. The Union was losing the war. And they knew they had to have some manpower. Frederick Douglass was up here. He had a great relationship with Abraham Lincoln. He was trying to get Lincoln to allow blacks to fight in the war. He couldn't get it done. The General Saxon, got Robert Smalls, sent him to Washington in August. A slave in March, he was sent up to Washington to sit down with Abraham Lincoln. They kind of figured that because of his celebrity status, he might get through to Lincoln. And he did. And Lincoln authorized him to go back to South Carolina and to recruit 5,000 African-American soldiers, and they got up to 40,000. And Lincoln, it's in the book, a lot of people, I'm gonna read you the exact quote. I marked it here. Here's what Lincoln said after the war. Without the military help of the black freedmen, the war against the South could not have been won. That's Abraham Lincoln's exact quote. So when you think about those battles, stealing the ship, the battle I just told you about near Secessionville, down near Hilton Head, South Carolina, you think about getting the authorization to bring the freed African Americans into this war, and the consequences that flowed from all of that. There ain't no South Carolinian that can match it, no matter who or what it is. Now,
So Smalls went on to serve 5 terms in Congress.
And 5 in the state legislature.
And 5 in the state legislature. But also, of course, the violence began to pick up
Right.
horrifically, and he had death threats constantly.
Yeah.
And what stands out beyond the heroism in the war was the heroism of sticking through this while he and his family were under constant threat, and it wasn't a theoretical one. People were being killed.
Oh, yeah. Well, Smalls, as others, Smalls, when all the stuff started,
Yeah.
he was arrested, put on trial. One of his fellow travelers testified against him at the trial, convicted, and Smalls, in a trade-off of Confederates for him, he finally got a pardon. But Smalls never, ever capitulated. He never. It's the most amazing thing in the world. Even Smalls was one of 2 African Americans that served in the 2 constitutional conventions. South Carolina had its first constitutional convention in 1868.
Yeah.
And that constitutional convention is when they got their freedom. Remember, slaves were freed as of January 1, 1863, and they fought the war. War was over. Then they had a constitutional convention. Smalls was a member of that convention. Smalls was also a member of the convention of 1895 that took all of that away.
With what, five or 6 blacks in that convention compared to?
Oh, the 5 or 6 in the second convention.
Yeah.
Smalls and one other
Yeah.
had been in the first one as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just talk for a minute about your personal connection to George Washington Murray, who's the last of the 8 and the last to serve before you.
But you can bring us back to number 7. Cause,
Okay, Thomas Ezekiel Miller.
Yeah, there's something interesting
Well,
about number 7.
yeah.
George Washington Murray was born in Sumter County, South Carolina, where I was born. George Washington Murray was born in an area of Sumter County called Spring Hill, where my father's mother lived. When we were growing up, we used to stop a lot at my father's uncle. My father's favorite uncle was Enoch. Enoch was married to Janie Murray. I knew Uncle Enoch, remember him very well. In fact, his property had the spring on it that gave the area its name. Well, there were always rumors at the family reunions about my family's relationship to George Washington Murray. We could never prove it. No one ever said exactly what it was. So one day I'm speaking at the Family and Friends annual meeting at St. Matthew's United Methodist Church, the church my father grew up in. And it was the year I was running for Congress in 1992. My cousin came up to me and picked up one of my brochures. He said, "This is going to be real historic." I said, "Yeah. If I get elected, it'll be the first black person since 1897. He said, "No, that's not what I mean." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "He was family." I said, "Oh, yeah?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Tell me how." He said, "I don't exactly know how, but Mom and Dad used to live with him and over in Sumter, and she'll be here shortly, and she'll tell you." Well, she wasn't feeling well that day, and she didn't come. So later, 2 nights later, I called her, and she got on the phone, and I told her what I wanted. And she was being very reticent. And I thought maybe I called her too late. So I hung up. So about 2 days later, I called her back, this time at high noon. I said, she should be awake now. Well, Finally, she just said, blurted it out. Now, James, back then, a lot of things happened without the benefit of marriage. And she would not say anymore. And I never said anymore to her about it. But I went to the census stuff. I did all the research I could. I could always find my father and his two brothers, his mother Phoebe. I've gone all the way back to 1890, and I saw them in the household. There was never any other male in that household, in all the census. I just kind of figured from that that there was a closer relationship than anybody was making out to be. Though we know, when I looked at the professor from University of Mississippi wrote a book on Murray. He said that Murray had an out-of-wedlock son named William. And he said when he was born, well, my father's oldest brother was William, born the same year and in the same area. And I don't know what's the same room, but all I know is that that we've been able. And I've hired 2 companies, paid them, and they have not been able to find it. And Skip Gates up at Harvard told me, my company will find it. I did everything they asked them to do, the swabs, sent all the stuff to them, and that's been 2 years ago, and I'm still waiting.
Okay, well, it's
let me tell you
pretty
about
strong
number 7.
circumstantial evidence there.
Number 7 is worth reading the book if for nothing else. Thomas E. Miller was the 7th guy, African-American, elected from South Carolina. Now, I'll talk about only 3 of the 8 had been enslaved. 7 of the 8 were African-American by birth. 1 was African-American by choice. That was Thomas E. Miller. The first president, anybody here from South Carolina State? Thomas E. Miller, when you walk down the halls and see the pictures of all the former presidents, you look at him, you know that first guy up there, he wasn't black. What happened, he was born out of wedlock. According to his own admission, he wrote in an interview with the Work Products Administration, he said that he was the son of Thomas Haywood's daughter, Thomas Haywood, that signed, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and given up for adoption. And he was adopted by an African-American family. And they moved to Charleston because he was born in a little place called Faribeville back then. Today it's Ridgeland in Jasper County, down there in the low country of South Carolina. Well, he got conscripted into the Confederate Army, got captured, and was sent to prison in Savannah. So when the war was over, the Union soldiers from up north took him with them up to New York. He met a guy named Bumfield, who was related to Robert Smalls. They got their high school education. They then went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, the same university, the HBCU, that Thurgood Marshall graduated from, also Langston Hughes. He went to that school. But rather than going back to New York, he decided that he was going back to South Carolina and was going to live as an African American. Now, those of you who get the book, I want you to look on page 229 in the book. On page 229, you're going to see a tombstone. I think it's 229.
Yep.
Read that top of that tombstone. I serve God and all the people, loving the white man not less, but the Negro needed me most. He made the choice to live as a black guy, as a Negro back then, African American. He became the first president of South Carolina State.
So I want to segue to a couple of other things, and we only have a few minutes to do it, but one of the things that's so striking here is how little elements in history, little twists, can dramatically shape the future. We see that all the time, but I had written actually before about the 1876 election, and we know that the freedom that was so hard fought would have slipped away much earlier if it weren't for federal troops
Right.
protecting people and keeping the most vicious Klansmen, horrible people from there from doing the worst things. Then we have an election that is undecided, goes to the House. We have 20 electoral votes that are in dispute, and we have a commission set up, and they deadlock, and they finally have a compromise. And the compromise is a Republican president, but with a deadly bargain. And that bargain was take the troops out.
Right.
I thought about, as I read that, and knowing a lot about that election, as it were, it could so easily have gone a different way.
Right.
But it also reminded me that if it weren't for, let's say Jim Comey coming out right before the 2016 election, breaking every norm of the FBI to talk about the emails, we would be in a very different place today.
Absolutely.
We would have a different Supreme Court. We wouldn't be looking at blowing up Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act after having blown up Section 5.
Right.
So these little twists in history make a huge difference. Yeah. Just reflect on that for a minute, but also on the fact that this was not the only Republican president who betrayed the African Americans in the South. Ulysses S. Grant did it as well.
And so did Hayes.
And Hayes,
Well,
yes.
when Hayes, quickly, in 1876, two people running for president were Samuel Tilden from New York, Rutherford B. Hayes from Ohio. When the election was over, as you just heard, no one had a majority in the Electoral College. At the time, you needed 185. Samuel Tilden had 184, one vote short. Hayes had 165, 20 votes short. 3 states, Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina. Those 3 states were sitting on 20 disputed electoral votes. They had sent up dueling electors. One group pro-slavery, the other group anti-slavery. And the House then had to take on the election, which is what they were trying to do on January 6, 2021. Get the election into the House of Representatives. Well, when the election got into the House of Representatives, they appointed this little commission. That commission was composed of 15 people. And when the compromise came up, the vote on the compromise was 8-7. They gave those 20 disputed votes to Rutherford B. Hayes. So Hayes went from 165 to 120. Took the troops out, which means Reconstruction came to an end by a vote of 8-7. One vote. When the troops left, Jim Crow started. So Jim Crow came into being by one vote, 185 to 184. Aside from all of that, before we ever get to this, Andrew Johnson, who succeeded Lincoln, he was Lincoln's vice president, so when Lincoln got murdered, he then became president. And he started trying to undo everything Lincoln had done. And because of that, the House impeached him. He became the first president to be impeached. And when the stuff went to the Senate, having been impeached by the House, the Senate failed to convict by one vote.
Yeah.
3 one-vote incidents brought an end to all of the gains of Reconstruction.
And just imagine where this country would be if those 8 had been joined by dozens, hundreds of others, the transformation of the South and the country.
Right.
There's one other parallel here, which is an attempt to bring back the federal presence through a bill called the Lodge Bill in 1890.
Henry Cabot Lodge.
And Henry Cabot Lodge, and they had a lame duck session where there was still a Republican majority, but it died on really the first filibuster.
Right.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but just to note that filibusters blocking civil rights, filibusters ensuring Jim Crow, and worse back then, were not just a product of the 1950s.
No,
so we have
no,
parallels
absolutely.
going all the way back. But for a couple of minutes before we turn to at least a few questions, you draw all the time on your own career, your own life, but otherwise, the parallels.
Yeah.
And as I read the book, some of the press, the vitriol directed that you would be shocked at, except if you listen to talk radio or look at social media, we find it's all back now. There is no phrase, no word that is off limits anymore.
Right.
And it's directed in a directly racist fashion. You look at a Supreme Court, and of course, as we look at those parallels, the 2000 election comes to mind as well, decided by one vote in a partisan way in the Supreme Court. If it had gone to the House, we would have had a similar kind of deadlock, and we don't know how all of that would have come out. But we're clearly in a precarious place. And if this Supreme Court does, as it appears almost certain to do, eviscerates Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, after John Roberts, when he did the Shelby County decision, said, yeah, Section 5 is going, but there'll always be Section 2.
You said that.
Then the representation of people of color in Congress is likely to go way back and back down again. All of these majority-minority districts suddenly in peril.
Right.
It took us a whole long time to get out of the horrors that we had before. Now you see what's happening in so many states with voting rights that we don't have a poll tax yet, but we're certainly going to move in a direction of all of these obstacles to enable people to vote. And the court blessing all of those. How do we get out of this, Jim?
Well, it's I call it creative devices. What made me change the direction of the book was just people asking me, have you ever seen it like this before? I said, no. That's only because I wasn't living in 1876.
Yeah.
But it's been just like this before.
Yeah.
And you can go through all of this. It's the red tie today, red caps, the red shirts. If you get the opportunity, and it's mentioned in this book, it's a man named Matthew Witherspoon Gary, a Confederate general, who wrote a document giving instructions as to how they should conduct themselves when they go out to disrupt elections. to do it violently, to lie. I mean, they were actually instructed. And if you look at Project 2025, and you listen to what's going on now, it's exactly what happened then. How do we get out of it? It is tough unless we win elections. I think you started the first step 2 Tuesdays ago, was it? Yeah. Today, 2 weeks ago, I went in and out of New Jersey and Virginia. I was not surprised at the results of either one of those elections. I've been around this business long enough to be able to feel how it's going to go. And I told Micah Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger that I thought they were going to survive. I thought it was going to be closer in New Jersey than it was. But what I did not see, I never went to Georgia. The results not in Georgia.
Yeah. And Mississippi.
And the results in Mississippi.
Mississippi.
It says to me, we've taken steps in that direction. People would love to see a revolution, but I don't think there's going to be a revolution. It has to be evolutionary, and which means everybody has got to be involved. Now, all of this rests upon several Supreme Court decisions that are yet to come.
Yep.
And we'll then know where we are when the Supreme Court makes its decision on Section 2 and a few other the redistricting that's going on. A federal court has just put a stop to the Texas thing.
For now.
How far that's going to go as these cases go up, I have no idea.
I would just make one little pitch here. I'm on the board of the Drum Major Institute.
Oh, yeah.
And with Martin Luther King III.
Right.
And I want to turn Martin Luther King's birthday in January into a national effort to put a spotlight on the challenges to the Voting Rights Act.
Sure.
We have to do something to put a focus on what the court is about to do to erase the greatest legacy of this incredible man. And we all should mobilize to do that. We have a few minutes before you have to get back to God knows what in the House. Well, we know
Let's just call it votes. We still have votes tonight.
Yeah. If we could take a question or two if they're there, and I think somebody has a microphone. And we have a question right there that I can see.
That's good.
First of all, thanks for being here, Mr. Clyburn. My name's Brad Neely. I recently moved here from New Jersey as an executive from companies like Johnson & Johnson down in the D.C. area. For the last 6 months or so, the government has been taken apart. If the tides shift and the Democrats or more reasonable people take over, do you think government can be rebuilt? I mean, I think everyone would agree that there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained, but you do it in a more methodical, thoughtful way than what's been done in the last 6 months. Can it be rebuilt to really function in a reasonable amount of time?
Absolutely. What's reasonable to me may not be reasonable to you. So my dad had a different definition of time than I had. Mine was got to be done by tomorrow morning. But so, sure, it could be done. As I said, we've been here before. I always say that our politics in this country moved like a pendulum on a clock. You can just look at it and think about it. It goes left for a while, and it goes back right for a while, and then it goes back to the left. It has always been that way. Our job is to make sure it doesn't go too far to the right and doesn't stay too long. So I believe that where we are, remember how quick we went from Barack Obama to Trump? How quick we went from Trump to Biden? How quick we went back to Trump? We can just as quick go back the other way. I mean, just think about it. And so we've got to decide whether or not you stay engaged in the process or whether or not you throw up your hands and says, you know, I really get really upset when I hear young people says, because it didn't come out the way you wanted it, I'm just not going to participate anymore. You're just playing into the hand. That's what the game is, to make you give up, make you not want to participate. Sure, it can, and I think it will, but you got to participate. Those people participated up there in New Jersey and in Virginia and Mississippi and Georgia. So if they had not participated, the results would have gone the other way. Somebody's going to always win the election. There's going to be an election every time. You got to decide whether or not you're going to do your part. I'll just tell people, what are you Democrats going to do? I said, well, here's what we're going to do. And I'll tell them. Then I'll turn to them, now what are you going to do? Because if you don't elect me, if you decide you're going to stay home because you're mad about the last election, then what have you done? So I just think that's what we got to do.
My name's Eli Goldstein. Again, thank you for Congressman Clyburn and Mr. Ornstein for doing this amazing talk. As you were talking about the Supreme Court case likely overturning Voting Rights Act, the main part of it, what do voters do to fight back against that? Because that's going to be a huge district-wide, country-wide overthrow. How do we fight back so that Republicans can't continue to steal elections through gerrymandering and other racial gerrymanders? How do we fight back if they make it so unfair?
There's no other way to fight back than to vote, than to maximize your participation. I mean, there's nothing else you can do about that. I mean, we can dream, but you've got to really engage in the process and don't stay focused on who the presidency. We got so happy. And here's the thing I want you all to check sometime. You go back to 1992, Bill Clinton got elected in 1992, and in 1994, 2 years later, Newt Gingrich took over the House. Okay? Now, if you look at the vote, our party got dramatically less votes 2 years later. The other party got the same vote that they got in 92, almost within 1 percentage point. But we lost 50 some odd seats because our folks, well, we voted for Bill Clinton, let's go home. They did the same thing with Barack Obama in 2008. Look at 2008 and look at 2010. You see a dramatic drop-off of voters on our side. The other side stayed around the same and won 56 seats. So that's what we have to do. You have to stay engaged. Now, I've not been able, now Norm is much more intellectual, much more studied than I am. I play a game with this stuff. He lives it. He may know whether or not this is true, but I've always read that Thomas Jefferson said that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Now, I've not found anywhere that he really said that, but he gets credit for it. But it's true. You can't maintain your liberty without staying vigilant. If you think I participate in this election, and I can sit back and let those I elected go to work for me, you are sadly mistaken. And the biggest number I can give you. In the 8 years of Barack Obama's presidency, we lost, on my side of the aisle, Democrats, 1,050 legislative seats. Yeah. Who draws congressional district lines? The state legislatures. So we ain't gonna vote for that. We done elected the president. They're the ones that are drawing the lines. Okay.
You gotta go?
No, I'm telling some of my colleagues are here. George Beatty? My Representative George Beatty? Troy Carter from Louisiana. And the former clerk of the House, Lorraine Miller. Where's Lorraine? As Texas, Ohio, and Louisiana. Thank you guys for being here.
Yes. I would just add one caveat to what you said, Jim, which is it's not just voting. Part of that vigilance is making sure that they don't steal those votes or intimidate people from voting. So look for organizations that are doing election protection and trying to combat what's also going to be a Justice Department that, instead of being a protector of rights, will be attacking rights. And I know you've got to go to get votes. Can we take another question or two?
Sure.
Yeah.
They're keeping up with the votes.
Okay, good.
In fact, I'm going to Columbus, Ohio. When, Joyce? I'm going to Columbus in about 2 weeks. Okay. Very good. And there's some interesting things in this book that I'm going to talk about in Ohio, but I'll give you all a little pre-thinking. Because Rosa Parks, she has this every year, Rosa Parks Day, and I'm speaking for that. There's an interesting thing in this book. There was a sit-in in Charleston on a streetcar by a lady named Ms. Bournes. I can't remember what page she's on, but nothing new is under the sun. And there's a part in this book that deals with Rosa Parks and a woman who sat in Columbia, South Carolina. If you read the Rosa Parks case, you see the Supreme Court had more than one issue in that case. One issue on public transit, the integration of public transit. There's a footnote in the case with the Supreme Court saying, we do not have to decide that question. We did that in Sarah Mae Fleming versus South Carolina Electric and Gas. So Sarah Mae Fleming in Columbia, South Carolina, won the case on public transit a year before Rosa Parks' case.
Yeah.
It's all in this book. Y'all learn a whole lot in this book.
Question over here?
Okay, yeah. My name is Julian Lenz. I'm a first year student at GW. My question is, as you've talked about tonight, the first 8 as pioneers, and also you, first elected in Congress in 1992. Who do you see today as the pioneers, would you say, for the next generation for African American representation in Congress and rising stars within the caucus?
Well, there are some incredibly smart, real tough people coming forward. All of them are not African American. I think Westmore's a fantastic guy. I think Bashir down in Kentucky is a great guy. In fact, I'm going to Kentucky on, I think, Sunday for their book festival, and I'll be with him down there and the former Congressman John Yarmouth. I think that Gabby has shown great guts out in California. We've got all kinds of people. The governor of Michigan, who's Gretchen Whitmer, is outstanding. I really believe, once again, and Norm mentioned it earlier about the Big Tent. I think we have to be careful about how we develop relationships. We seem to feel that you and I have got to agree on everything. Let me tell you something. I stayed married to the same woman for 58 years. We were married for 58 years. I can tell you about disagreements. But she was the first one to say to me, she didn't do public speaking, but she made sure that I knew what I was talking about when I went out to speak. She was the first one to say to me, that if you want to win this election, you better nominate Joe Biden. That's what she said to me. And I've looked at all the experts who said that when it's all said and done, he was the only one that could have won that race at the time he did. Now, things happen within the framework of the times within which we live. So a lot of things. John Lewis and I met as 19-year-old college students. And we were founders of what became known as the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. And so I knew John very closely. We both married librarians, and the two of them became friends. And what John said to me, the week before he left to go home, he called me to the back of the chamber, and he said, I don't think I'll be coming back. But you do what you can, because I'm afraid that the Black Lives Matter movement is going to get caught up with this defund the police the same way we got caught up with Burn, Baby, Burn. He said that to me. And many of you may recall, I came out strongly against that slogan, defund the police. And I can tell you, I don't care what anybody said to the contrary. The fact's very clear to me. That cost us a bunch of seats.
ICE is another
Good
matter.
afternoon. Oh,
Go ahead.
hi. My name is Hazel Thomas. I'm with a number of people here from the D.C. Federation of Democratic Women. And
Thank you all so much. I heard from you all. Thank you all so much for being here.
thank you. We're real concerned about the Supreme Court. Seems like we always give them a pass. What do you think individuals, as well as groups, can do to help the general public recognize what they're doing to undermine the democracy in this country, and with voter registration particularly? What would you suggest regarding voter registration and voter suppression regarding the Supreme Court? Thank you.
Well, I agree with you. You just have to outwork them. The fact is, there's not one thing we can do about changing the Supreme Court unless we change the people who have to nominate them and have to confirm them. So the president, I'm sorry? That's why we have to talk about it. That's why I wrote this book. That's exactly why I wrote this book. I said, in this book, you will find some great, I think great ideas that I got from traveling all over this country and talking to people. And why I think people need to know that this is nothing new. And you need to know what not to allow to happen again. If you look at rifle clubs, you can't be, in my opinion, conservative light or progressive light. You either got to be one or the other. And you got to commit to it, and you got to work on it. And it's not going to happen overnight. We've gotten up in the Congressional Black Caucus, we've now got 62 members. 66?
62.
62 members. And you got two former chairs of the caucus in here and the current vice chair of the caucus in Troy Carter. And we work on this all the time. We run around the country all the time trying to tell people this ain't going to happen overnight. But we cannot postpone the journey of 1,000 miles. Begin with a single step. So you just can't postpone getting involved because you won't be able to solve it by tomorrow. When I lost 3 times before I got elected. And a friend of mine said to me, you know what they say, 3 strikes and you're out. I said, that's a baseball rule. And nobody should live their lives by baseball rules. So what I'm saying to you, I'm in this with you. We're in this with you. We just got to work together and make sure that each one of us do what we can to use our skills, our gifts, whatever our talents are, to do what needs to be done. And it's, just think about your children, your grandchildren. If it doesn't happen by tomorrow, maybe if we work at it, it might happen by next week.
Yeah. Over here.
Where's the mic? I'm afraid to ask him a question. Now, he studies this stuff as much as I do, and he's from South Carolina. Sure. Thank you. And that is another similarity to what's going on today. The Hamburg Massacre, which is the worst massacre in all of South Carolina's history, right down in Aiken County near North Augusta, it was all about a confrontation with the National Guard. That's what precipitated the Hamburg Massacre, a confrontation with the National Guard.
Okay, I want to be cognizant of
Sure.
your time. It's 20 after 8.
Yeah.
And I know,
We'll take one more question and then
Yeah.
We'll go. I hope somebody, these lights have
she's
got me, I can't see.
bringing the mic around
Okay.
now. Okay.
I get round 2. So quick question on immigration. The current, everyone would agree that the immigration process needs to change. But what's your thoughts on the current status of what's going on with ISIS and immigration?
I don't know what's going on with immigration. Simply because all of this stuff that's going on with ICE, if you look at what the current administration say they are doing and go back and look at the numbers from Barack Obama, they're falling way short of what Barack Obama did on that front. And they never slammed anybody to the ground. They never put people in foreign jails, and they had a greater impact on getting people out of the country who were not deserving to be in here. Go check the numbers, and you'll find that that's factual. And the same thing with Biden. Biden's numbers were much better than these numbers, and they did it without being inhuman. This dehumanization of people is something that's just un-Christian-like, un-American. It is just, to me, it makes us the quote, unquote, ugly Americans.
You know, that's such a powerful parallel in your book. The dehumanization that was deliberately done back in that era,
Right.
so that they could justify lynchings, murders, all of this other stuff.
Right.
That's what we're seeing now. They're deliberately dehumanizing people who they're pulling off the streets and throwing into detention camps.
And you mentioned newspapers.
Yeah.
The newspaper headlines, I mean, they were inviting people. In 1960, when I was arrested the first time, March of 1960, my hometown newspaper editorialized, inviting vigilante actions. The same thing you did
Yep.
back in the 1870s. In fact, I became what they call, my lawyer, Matthew Perry, who some of you remember, called me his star witness. I wasn't his star witness. The only reason I was the witness in that case is because my father was a minister and my mother was a beautician. He wasn't preaching to any white people on Sunday, and she was not fixing any white people's hair. They were insulated from the system because everybody whose parents had jobs, they lost their jobs. And I was picked. I mean, he just looked right at him and said, Clyburn, you're going to take the stand. And he told me why. So we had to be real about that. So it wasn't all back in the 1870s. It was happening in 1960s. And if you read what's happening now, we just had somebody that lose their job as an attorney up in New York because her father ran afoul of the president. And he's now on trial.
Yeah.
Okay.
The votes are being called.
Votes are being
Let's thank you all for coming. One last round of applause for this wonderful man.